Welcome back, my awakened community. I am so excited to be returned from this Dimensions of Disclosure conference. But first, we have to start out with formalities because we are here for you. Welcome back to Waking Up Solutionary TV presents Ascension series with Dr. Tatiana and Genesee Roy. Genesee, hey, you're with us tonight. I'm so excited to share and provide this with you.
I am so excited. I am here with my fingernails in my mouth, waiting to hear. Let's get rid of the formalities and jump right in.
Let's jump in. Okay, absolutely. So, first starters, just to our audience, because we did a big build up. Genesee and I were both going to be there. Unfortunately, at the last minute, that did not work out, but she has been following along and supporting getting out little data streams that were just taken with my casual iPhone 7. Genesee's the one with the professional camera and with the very skilled eye. So I just did my best with the device on hand. We did do an interview live from Dimensions of Disclosure Conference with Joanne Richards. Take a look for that on YouTube. Please go to YouTube and subscribe and like. Here's one of the things that I learned and that Genesee's been telling me for a while. All I really care about is getting this information out to you. That is Genesee's and my goal. But we forget sometimes that there is a method to the business madness behind it. And just getting to our live audience, which is always somewhere between 5 and 10,000, doesn't mean that we're getting to the larger audience that spirals into the levels of community that we're seeking to reach and assist. And going and having a presence on YouTube and BitChute and so many of these other social media platforms really does matter. So those of you that come to us and see us live, you may not ever want to go and listen to us on YouTube, no problem. Please go and subscribe, hit the bell, and forward it on to anybody that you think would benefit. And know that we appreciate it because it keeps us on the air and keeps us relevant. But I found out while there, and why it was important to say that first, is that two big hits in the industry that are new to the idea of this consciousness and dimensions of disclosure arena were Jordan Sather and Bridget Nielsen. And they are young, they are bright. I dare call them really, really lucid millennials. But in 1 year, right about there, it was their sweet spot for both of them, just by being really candid, sharing and allowing the audience that is part of critical thinking to be able to listen to the freshness of their perspective. They became YouTube sensations in that period of a year. They may not like that I call them that, but that's really in all humility what it is, and are being invited to these types of conferences where speakers and some of these expert guests have been in this industry of um, clean energy technology, hidden black ops and UFO information, and military, repression of various things that they've been doing this with for decades, years and years and years. And that is a high honor, and they've earned it. But it is because we have to use these social platforms. So, Genesee, I don't know where you would like to start because I haven't even been able to do a data download with you. Our audience may not believe it, but we have not had a chance to have a conversation. I got in at 6 this morning. So, where should we start with some of the guests that we were hoping to be able to evolve into prior to having them actually live on the show, which will be between September and October? We're going to have a lot of these guys on the show, but who do you think we ought to start with just to give our audience a taste?
Well, I love Bridget, but I'd love to save her for last because
Okay.
she's the one I know most about. And you mentioned Jordan, which I have heard very little about, and you seem very excited. So I would love to dive right into Jordan. And if it has to segue to Bridget, so be it.
Okay. All
But
right.
please jump right in.
Good enough. So we're going to start out with the fresh young minds in this industry. For those of you that are or are not familiar with Jordan Sather, he started very humbly, like many of us, self-taught, went through explaining that it was the catalyst of working at a health food store. And I kind of want to save that for him if he chooses to share that when he comes on the show as an active live guest, being able to take your phone calls. But ultimately, his mind was not as clouded by cognitive dissonance. He had access to a lot of material that was both written and in video form to make him start questioning, the nature of reality, all of our systems that many of us have been blindsided by and been corralled into living our lives, entrained a certain way to believe this is the only way we function as human beings, the good guys, the bad guys. And what he did is he started writing with stillness, with the storm, and doing some blogs, and then realizing, like many of us, including myself, the written word is hard for me, but put me with an audience that I have a charismatic connection with, and I would love to talk to you and engage with you. So that ended up being a better outlet for him. And he created a YouTube channel called Destroying the Illusion. And it shot off like rockets, and people related to him. He has a brilliant way of orating and just flowing from one topic to another, showing, the symmetry and the connection in some of the topics that he was featuring that cover everything from QAnon and what's been going on with the Trump administration, all the way down to, you know, phytochemicals and poisons in our earth, soil and water relating to chemtrails. It's just been such a broad audience. And so I took him aside and got to talk to him twice yesterday, while I was still in Colorado at the conference. And for him, it was such a fresh perspective. It's like, I don't know where my career is going with this. All I know is that I couldn't not speak. All I know is that I couldn't wear a muzzle anymore. I couldn't stay relatable to my immediate cluster of friends, or at that point, he had a partner and a child. I couldn't just dumb it down and not share where I felt powerfully convicted. And this is him speaking, within my own family dynamic. I was finding out things. It was being revealed to me in such a powerful way. I had to share it. And once it went on to YouTube, he realized rather humbly, this is what I want to do. And he suffered with some struggles that looked like, maybe living in your car, not knowing how you're going to make your mortgage, how you're going to take care of your responsibilities. But those of us that are feeling so powerfully motivated to do it are riding on that whole, when I am in my true core competence, when I'm in my purpose, which is the why, the what and the why, that's our job. But the how is up to the universe. So when you stay in your purpose, and if you're feeling called to be involved in this, just as Jordan was, if you stay on that path of really, I think, intuitive and lucid direction, internal pull and direction, the universe takes care of it. So he is a doll. He was just so tremendously well informed. I think we're looking at having him the end of September, beginning of October.
Oh, fantastic. Did he get much into how he started discerning the information that was coming to him? You said that he had access to videos and some, I'm not sure if it was books or
Mhm.
writings, but did he talk much about what his where his clarity came from and his process?
He did, but here's the fascinating thing, Genesee, about the how. I spoke with many of the guests as well as the speakers, and some of the security detail, and some of the volunteers that help run it. It was a really broad opportunity to get feedback from all those that were involved at the conference. What was universal with those that I spoke to is that we have an unsatiable, ravenous appetite for more information. And that's really what the biggest issue is. The information's out there. When you have a ravenous, unsatiable, unstoppable urge to understand how the universe works and what your place is in it, and how you can reinsert yourself from a place that's informed, which was something that Bridget discussed, that Jordan discussed, that David Wilcock discussed. Many of those that were researchers before they were experiencers, or experiencers that needed to understand the nature of what they were experiencing. When that happens, you will discover that everything that you need is at your fingertips at the level with which you're ready to receive it. So, because he worked at a health food store and was curious and was internally led, he was able to find a whole entire library that was in the back room with the videos and the written literature, and then started asking questions of the owners of the health food store that he worked at in Washington State. But if you think about it, how many of the employees didn't do that? How many of them didn't
Yeah.
already have that internal inquiry going? So it was less what content it was or where he found it. It was more that he had woke up to the fact that he was seeking a greater understanding about his place in the universe and his contribution.
So you said he was drawing lots of parallels, that he was kind of working in a multidimensional way,
Yes. How
pulling
about
this
that?
information together and weaving a tapestry for you. So what was the picture that he painted overall?
He had so much story leading into how he became, as this neophyte, into an area of expertise, that I think more of his message was challenging others to stay in that place of unsatiable and eager yearning for that truth, and
Mm,
to stay open to the fact that as long as they are, they will be able to use their own discernment and being able to weave together how it's relevant for them and how they can use that to make an impact
Mm,
on the world. He was really humble. It was more of the testimony of here's how I'm making a difference and here's how I'm staying
mm,
true to me because I have to
mm,
be in this community. This is who I am. I've been willing to let
mhm,
go of friends and family or distance and alienate myself because this is so in alignment with my truth. If you
mm,
keep following along at the level that you're feeling, intuitively and individually called to, then this
mhm.
is your community. You're going to have a role to play. That was really more of his message.
Did he talk about his method of knowing how to discern what felt right and what didn't? Was it just through his process of, again, studying and reading everything he could and
Mhm.
analyzing? Did he then just run it through himself to see what he felt aligned to and what he didn't? Or did he talk about that much?
Well, what he did get clear on was that because he had provided himself a pretty a pretty wide filter of allowing everything to come in that was political, that was historical, that was religious, that was at one point philosophical. Because he was so ravenous and spent so much time doing it, he felt that it had keyed him into his discernment. He did not run up prejudices of, I won't
Mhm,
study from that resource or that particular individual isn't someone that, um, you know, my my preconceived notions of where a truth teller would be is, so I'm not going to listen to him. He was so wide open and so accessible that he felt like that
mm.
heightened his discernment quite a bit. And I agree.
Interesting. That it sounds like in my language, I'd say he doesn't have a belief system
Mm,
inhibiting him from then discovering that next level, right? Because the belief system is what will block us from
yes.
expanding further.
Right.
Oh, so interesting.
Prejudices will do an awful lot to filter our view of the world and our ability to really interact as spatially as you and I know we can, Genesee. And that's what we're really encouraging our audience to do and be. This community needs you. You,
Yeah.
all of you people out there that are part of this, we need you. We are not at max capacity. We're not at critical mass yet. So if you've got a voice, if you've been holding this down for 5 months or 20 years, we want you to be part of our community and be a way shower too, in whatever way you're feeling guided and led. And that was really the theme that Jordan was coming from.
Use that throat chakra.
That's right.
So you had mentioned in the very beginning that Bridget and Jordan were very connected in their messaging, and now I'm the one opening this box to go right to Bridget. But it interests me how you describe Jordan and his just clarity and an ability to not have belief systems, to where he was open to all information to find his resonance and his authenticity within the information he was receiving. So, do you find, because you used the word millennial generation for Bridget and Jordan, do you think that this is something that this entire generation has the ability to tap into a bit easier
Yeah,
than those
right.
before them?
That is such a great question. And I know that there are many that I've come in contact with that have run analytics on millennials and what their moral values happen to be and how they view their relationship and what they owe the world in terms of
Mhm.
working the kinds of hours and giving up personal freedoms and waiting to be able to live a certain life until they have put into our current industries and systems. And what I think I appreciated about both of them is, yes, they did show up with less of a prescribed, forced view of their
Mhm.
role and their obligation to these existing systems and to life, how to live their lives. With regards to Bridget, she was so fresh. She was the opening speaker. And she
Mhm.
came up without a PowerPoint, without anything to read, without anything to sell, just
Yes.
bright as a star. She was just glowing and effusive and fresh and completely um unpious in her
Yeah.
delivery. Everybody is going to gobble her up. She's on next week. Don't forget to come back next week, 7 to 8 p.m. on the 27th, because Bridget is going to be here and she's going to be taking questions in the house, and she's just a ball of light. But she basically said, Listen, I had these personal experiences after working on my shadow work. We all know we need to be in the meditative work. We need to be in the personal discipline and reflection. She was no different. She shared that she had chosen to take a look at some things that came up for her that demonstrated she'd had experiences that many would have considered abductions, terrifying, scary, involuntary. And because she did the shadow work, she realized that she had had interactions with beings that had interacted with, abducted, and run some level of experimentation or reproduction on her physical vehicle that she's operating in right now. And instead of becoming another archetypal victim and crawling back into the archetypal child, she chose to meet it from a multidimensional level, Genesee, of recognizing that it was entirely possible that some of her other multidimensional selves that are much more lucid, much more aware, conscious, and have complete recall had chosen to participate in this. And it was her 3D veiled self that maybe, was struggling with that level of not only recall, but also being able to embody the soul contract that it knew that it was here to conduct. So she is a mother of hybrid children. She's very open about this. She talks about interacting with other beings in a way that was reproductive or sexual on some of these excursions. And she just says it from a place so no taboo that you can't even fake that. You have to really have no lens, or religious or moral shame to just be able to come out and go, this happened to me. And, as a matter of fact, this is part of my multidimensionality and I'm good with it.
You probably have someone in your circle that has a hybrid kid too.
That's right. She was brilliant and so present to what it takes for all of us to not be in the fear and actually get more into the more conscious empowerment of the fact that so much of what brought us to where we are, we actually really did consciously at another multidimensional level, which is available to us now. We did consciously agree to deal with the bullies and to deal with the restrictive personalities that might have been our family or our religious institutions or our education system, because it formed who you are in that moment. And as soon as you can let go of the stigma around it, and as soon as you can let go of the shame and proudly embrace your multidimensionality and the story that brought you there, now you're ready to lock and load and move and make a difference. So really good stuff.
And you're triggering me into thinking about this in a specific way. It's not a question as much as you just resonated so deeply with me in stating what Bridget was talking about in that way, that you and I always talk when we're on camera, when we're off camera, we always talk about empowerment and handing the power back to the people, back to the individual seeking the ascension, seeking this path. And as you just explained that, it's interesting because the one thing that I see, and I know not to speak for you, but just because you've talked to me so much about all the work you do, especially this retreat you have coming up at the end of the month, you teach people how to move through their shadow work. And that is the hardest part.
Yeah.
It's being ready and willing and open to face everything in that subconscious world, everything you've been swallowing, pushing down, not taking care of. It's the opening the closet and letting the skeletons out. And you just triggered this in me. I truly think, I know that in doing that shadow work and that healing work, that's where we reclaim our sovereignty. That's where we take back all of our power. But I do feel that, if to the listeners out there, if you don't even know where to start, that is the one place that I think finding somebody who you resonate with, finding somebody who is speaking a message that really just resonates with you in some way, shape, or form, maybe look into their process and what they did to face and deal with their shadow, because that is the first step to reclaiming complete sovereignty and feeling comfortable in living without fear. And everything Bridget, it sounds like she was talking about, being able to understand, what's out there and see it from this multidimensional self, or this causal body, the total soul, and knowing that, I chose to have hybrid kids. They're going to get activated on Earth one day and they're going to heal the Earth. So what? Right?
You are right. And I want to just piggyback on that. part of that healing was being empowered that it was true and being willing to be public about the fact that it was true. Here's what she said. She said, I just realized once I was clear that this was part of who I am and this is part of how I'm operating on this planet, in this body, I needed to tell more people about it because if it was happening to me, it was happening to more, and that we really needed to help heal others at the level of community so that they could safely relay what they were impacted by, and then move through that victimhood and that disillusionment and that confusion and the denial into the power. So she said, I started putting out a couple of YouTube videos, and apparently they went viral immediately. I think she did 4 of being a hybrid mother, having hybrid children. And she said
Mhm.
that weekend, she was all over the radio waves, and I believe it was down in Los Angeles. And then immediately all of these interview requests started to come in, and it's just gone like wildfire for her. Do you know how healing and ameliorating as a final step to her process that was, to not only
Oh,
find
yeah.
that she was accepted, but she was in demand, that people were desperate to
Yes.
hear her speak so she could connect the
Mhm.
dots for so many others. And I want to say something too, also to the transparency of the shadow. It was a big part of the message that Emery Smith, who has been big time featured on Cosmic Disclosure with David Wilcock, Emery Smith and Corey Goode, again, big insider's insider on Cosmic Disclosure and the Sphere Being Alliance. Take a look at his own website and all that he's doing with conferences. It was Corey Goode that put the conference together. But they both have experiences through the military in these kind of black ops, otherwise unheard of programs that have names like Secret Space Program. But they said where we're moving in this awakening of humanity, and I don't mean moving into it's coming down the pike. I mean, we're in it now. We're in the band. We're in that kind of upper octave frequency, and we're going to move all the way through the density until all of humanity is immersed in this, is what I playfully call the no bullshit zone. And what they would say is we're in a fourth dimensional space with which the veil is no longer masking our shadow, making what we say and what we're really thinking not necessarily immediately permeable to those that are around us that we're speaking to or that we're masking our shadow from and our true intentions and our true beliefs. And a lot of the extraterrestrials that we have worked with throughout many of these programs, and that there were quite a few guests that could attest to and had beautiful documentation and corroboration for, they are already in the no bullshit zone. They've been in this for eons, meaning you can't lie. What you think and what you feel is not only what creates your world, it is a veil or a permeable membrane that's connected to everyone else's permeable membrane, and everyone can feel you, sense you. So you can't shake your
Mhm.
hand and be thinking, oh God, I don't want to talk to this person, and be saying out loud, hello, it's wonderful to meet you. They get what your thought and your emotive field is, whatever that quantum field is saying. No lies, people. No lies. No
Yeah,
bullshit.
you feel it here and here.
So intuitives have known this forever. We go into a room and we can feel who's fake right off the bat. Intuitive empaths can feel, you can sometimes hear the gossip in your head. You can feel the disdain while their eyes look at you with a smile, but you can feel their sneer. And that's been difficult for a lot of the indigos and the crystal children and the early intuitives that have been on this planet to be dealing with the veil of quite honestly deception that many people
Mhm.
are constantly in, our systems that say they're doing one thing towards our freedoms and actually stripping us, and we're all just meant to feed into the storyline. That's been hard for a long time, but the beauty of where we are now is everyone is moving into that band. The intuitive
Mm.
empathic abilities, which is why I teach what I teach in the energy and medical intuitive coursework, is it's entrainment that we all need to be able to utilize as a skill because we all have it.
Mhm.
We're all waking up. We're all decalcifying that pineal gland. And so the exciting part of this is that our current mainstream media, our politicians, our corporate heads of multiple organizations for which many of us have become very codependent because of food and air and water and transportation, they're not going to be able to lie to us anymore either. We are all going to be in a place where what they're saying doesn't match what we know and can feel more loudly than what their voice is saying happens to be true. And it is
Mhm.
going to be one of the hardest times for all of us because turning on your intuition, if you haven't been working on it, is going to be dizzying. It's going to
Mm.
be according to Emery, according to Corey Goode and others that have moved into this field. And I can speak for myself. When you're looking at someone and what they're saying is not what they're truly emoting to you, it can be a very destabilizing place until you realize, no, I am an intuitive consistently, and this is the way it runs. So we're welcoming all of you to maintain communication and building up of this community that we're all in, because you're going through this too. This isn't going to be an exclusive few, and we want to support your process.
So was there anything else that Emery, because you've said his name twice now, so I want to know more of what he was bringing. Was he talking about some of the secret programs that he's been so ingrained in bringing to everybody who's seeking, or was he more about this expansive view of how we're all going to shift and how we all are shifting to basically bring more light to, I think, the lies and the deceit that's been happening.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, let me do something really quick first, and we'll definitely go there with Emery. I want to open up the phone lines because we are going to be doing Q&A, and we want to keep encouraging that Q&A so that our community can get these questions live. 919-518-9773. 919-518-9773. And for those of you that are in Skype, it is Computers 2K Voice. Computers 2K Voice. So for those that have been following David Wilcock and all that he's gone through with Corey and then introducing Emery, Emery was one of those whistleblowers that had come incognito, has needed to be protected and not in the limelight up until recently. He was military and then got involved in in some of the special programs that had to do with using his medical degree and expertise. And he was doing not quite autopsies, but doing samples. He was getting lab samples from deceased tissue, and in some cases, recently, real fresh deceased tissue. I believe he was part of those programs for a good 20 years, and he did very, very well. He knew that he was under very strict command to keep things quiet. He would be in what looked like, a kind of a classical army or Marine base above ground, but underground was a myriad of tunnels and networks of rail-less types of transportation. He's been able to talk about how many civilizations may have come and go and work side by side that are otherworldly, that may be internal Earth or extraterrestrials, with which he would actually work on a lot of these lab samples and autopsy type of experiments that he was asked to do. And kind of thought that he was going to stay through that career maintaining that level of secrecy that was natural. But because of the inherent unsafety in being on the inside of these very secretive types of operations, you never really know whether you can become a liability to the system. You have to be impeccable with what you share and what you don't share. And he knew that some of these things were not necessarily in his best interest to take to the grave. And when he did start talking to David, it was never out loud, and it was never, trying to draw attention to himself, but it brought on the wrath of those would-be leaders, those unelected few with far too much power, to wreak havoc on his livelihood, on his very life. He lost homes, he lost vehicles, he lost property, he lost files that had given any legitimacy to who he had been for all of those years and the programs for which he had hugely contributed. He had his own animal in his mind killed as he shared it, which was that was his family. He is not currently married, didn't have children, and so his dog was his family, and then taken by these unmarked officials. And he realized after being in this community that if he didn't get more vocal rather than less vocal, if he didn't become such a known voice and a name, that he was actually going to be an easier target. And so becoming more public seemed to be necessary. So he's been in the hospital and targeted with maybe directed energy weapons or some forms of poisoning. He's needed to be funded by some of David's groups and communities, David Wilcock's groups and communities, because financially he's had everything taken from him. We've got people that have given everything to be part of this disclosure community. Folks, I don't know if you know that being whistleblowers, being another, Edward Snowden, being a Corey Goode, being an Emery Smith, these are not safe or popular places to be. They often warrant the attention of a lot of people that want more of their life energy in Q&A than they actually have the ability to maintain while they are trying to sustain themselves. And they get a lot of negative greeting attention from those inside the establishment that don't like the reach that they have. So please know, when we're featuring them out of honoring them. These are not celebrities. These are not disclosure rock stars. You may see them that way, but these are people that have taken a very severe hit and have been marginalized in ways you can't even begin to understand, including needing security detail, following them around everywhere they go just to ensure that they can continue to live a life of their own dictation. So it was pretty profound. Emery kind of hit the whole expanse.
Can you tell me, you've used this with me a lot recently, and it's the first time I've heard it through your words, this negative greeting. Can you explain to me more of when you air quote it too? I know there's a lot more behind it.
Yes. Well, Joy reminded us of the correct terms because Joy Jackson, who we've had on the show, is very proficient in Law of One, and she runs groups that are very ardent students of Law of One. But the raw Law of One was a channeled material, and it's something that I have not read from cover to cover because I've been knee deep in other texts and other writings, but something that I delve into. And when we talk about negative greeting, it is a 6-dimensional mindset being channeled into a 3rd-dimensional word form, basically trying to say that everything in its fractalized divinity that looks like individuated souls connecting with one another is either a positive greeting or a negative greeting, depending on your
Mm,
perspective and the gradient of positive energy you feel as opposed to attack or discordant energy that
mm,
you determine. So negative greeting for them would be you have well the full expanse of a negative entity, a discarnate, energy that could be an interdimensional or an extraterrestrial that is leaking off their or leaching, excuse me, off their energy field and draining the vitality of their major organ systems, making them sick, making them depressed, um, holding them captive in their mind field and putting thoughts into their head about the fact that they're not really making an impact. It wasn't worth it. Why go on? All the things to strip them of that sense of ferocity for the purpose of continuing to be ever vigilant in their cause. That kind of negative greeting, which is much more etheric and in that 95% dark space, dark matter that we talk about all the time in the measurable universe, all the way to very, very real, very embodied, well armed in black camo at times, and in sometimes vehicles for transportation that look otherworldly, coming and showing up in their very bedrooms and saying, "You say another word, this is going to be your fate." So it's not a greeting, but it is a communication tool, and as Ross says it's the way with which the universe as individuated form communicates with itself. You decide how it feels, and then you know whether it's a negative or a positive greeting.
got it. Thank
Yeah,
you.
of course.
So, oh, yeah. Can we jump into another one? Or
We
did you have
can.
more
Let
on
me put the number out though. 919-518-9773. Come on, people. We know you have questions. You're showing up in our GoToWebinars, in our Facebook Lives. You're showing up in our YouTube lives and also in the feed. So call us up. We know you've got questions about this conference. Not everybody could fly out to Colorado and do this, and it was tremendous. We will be doing a lot more with the guest live, but if you've got some Q&A now, 919-518-9773. Okay, Genesee, who are we talking about next?
So you have mentioned Corey, and I know you've been uber excited to talk about what he was presenting. You felt like it was in resonance to everything between disclosure and ascension movement. So please spill.
Well, so there's unique features about every one of these guest speakers, these experts in their field. What is unique about Corey is that while he has very beautiful texture to his story, he has the ability, because of his experience, to corroborate many other stories and create almost a complete mosaic or picture of what actually has been going on in this human evolutionary movement and where we are about to step into around this ascension and disclosure. He's just got so many of the pieces that bring it all into a cohesive picture. Um, He was brought into the secret space programs back when he was a teenager, signed a contract to do a 20 and back. And for those of you that are not familiar and have not been following cosmic disclosure, just what that means is you sign a contract to be involved in these secret space programs and be used at whatever capacity that they best determine to place you. And they agree after 20 years to return you with certain levels of, compensation that you would find to be warranting you giving away 20 years of your life and literally be removed from your family, removed from your life, removed from your education, removed from any commitments that you have, because you're going to be gone for 20 years and they're going to put you back having already determined how to master space time and and time travel. They're going to put you right back where they took you, the very moment, the very day, and they age reverse you using a very specific alien technology, extraterrestrial and high quantum science technology. They age regress you right back to that very space time and plug you back in. He says he's done that 3 times. That would put him in like near 130 years old, because if there is nothing but the ever present now, that means everything exists in that present now, including the ability to be able to be a 20-year-old version of yourself and a 130-year-old version of yourself. We just happen to have this fractalized agreement to create a concept of time so that we can all make spatial sense of this realm that we're in right now. But it's really not terribly far-fetched, and the science is pretty lucid around it. He was part of an interrogation and detaining outfit that would get their hands on with sufficient intel, extraterrestrial beings that had either gotten authorization to actually be here or not be here. He was able to see how Earth systems here on the ground with the syndicate and the elite that many call the cabal had made contracts or made treaties with beings from other star systems that have come and gone and that have been an active part of our solar system, some of them benevolent, some of them not so benevolent. Our governments being involved or our military branches involved in them. And a lot of them have had to do with how safe the rest of our society is, because they knew that they didn't have the technology to be able to sufficiently defend us. And so they kind of volunteered, in some cases, many of our own human citizenry to be taken or abducted or removed off world. And we know that we lose people on this planet and we never hear from them again year after year after year. I think it would shock people how many actually disappear in one form or another. So he goes into kind of the darkness of that, but swings all the way through to the light, in that because this has been his history, because he came into the programs as an intuitive empath, he has been instrumental in the changeover of power in the Galactic Federation that oversees our immediate star systems and cooperative star systems, that is bringing humanity back in charge of its own DNA experiments, in charge of its own directing its spirituality, and bringing that veil that is thinning as we speak completely down, so that we can step into our full human evolutionary density rising, which is up in from 3rd dimension, where the veil is very thick, to 4th dimension, where it begins to disappear, to a 5th dimensional humanity and Earth sphere and all sentient life matching that 5th dimensionality, where we really start to create higher levels of social order and very connected levels of galactic brotherhood and sisterhood, and act upon a growth potential that has always been available to us, but that has been held down because of these cabal and these dark energy syndicates. And those that have worked with him, extraterrestrials that have known his soul that he didn't directly recognize in some of these in these interactions, he says have given him a certain name that sounds very biblical, that sounds very prophetic, and it smacks of Enoch. And those that have read the books of Enoch, those that have studied biblical lore and maybe gotten into some of the Kabbalah, will know that there were prophets like Elijah and those that have actually come and were told that they would return to us, maybe in different bodies, maybe in different forms, but that he is a return of one of these prophetic figures and one of the way showers of moving us. And he's very humble about this. I want to say he's very introverted. He is very straight and narrow in the way that he delivers, and does not assume any level of prophetic celebrityism, is not inviting
You
or
haven't,
invoking
yeah,
that.
You haven't explained it in an ego way. I mean, how you've explained him and his process, it seems extremely humble and like this is something he's just been charged to do.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Charged, and I would say challenged, because when you have a family and he has a family, and when you have been someone who has been on the inside of these programs, but not a high level decision maker, and not one that felt like they had a lot of influence over it, and maybe even was okay with the veil of forgetfulness, because they can wipe your memory. We know this through, MK Ultra and Project Monarch and so many other things that many of our guests may be familiar with. The technology to create disassociation in the brain is something that we know how to do very well and have known how to do for a millennia here, just as humans. When you have some of this higher tech, the ability to wash the brain and the memory, and the ability to access consciousness, especially when a lot of it's been traumatizing, is very easy. So to have had to be forced to remember so much of this and then be able to be in full recall, manage his shadow, manage his fear, and be under threat of negative entity and an extraterrestrial energy threats, as well as the government, black operations and military that have come after him, has been insurmountable. I don't think I could come up with sufficient words to truly embrace the sacrifice that he is. And having met him and followed him both as a promoter of his work and what he's shared through the Sphere Being Alliance, and what Joy Jackson has shared, being able to manage some of his social media. We've asked him to be on the show. We will see whether that becomes appropriate moving forward. I'm going to check back in 2 weeks with the person who handles that schedule for him. He has so much to offer, but the demand for him and being able to manage his energy while extraterrestrial beings are on a regular basis, physically and in full contact, interfacing with him, removing him from his very home in blue spheres or in craft, and showing him things about a prophetic future timeline with which we are all co-creating right now, and asking him to come back and share that with us. Imagine what that can do to the psyche while he's still embodied in 3D. He said sometimes he
Yeah.
comes back and the most he can muster is staring at the wall for 3 days,
Well,
nonstop.
that's what I wanted to ask you because you and I have both. This is where we connected.
Yeah.
Our energy connected initially. So we've both had these experiences where we've been taken into different multidimensional realities and planes, and both had been given the choice to stay or go. And the thing that we discussed was how hard it was to come back. And for him, it sounds like he's doing this at least, once a week, if not more, in contact and leaving this third dimension and then having to come back. And that integration part is so hard. Does he talk much about that in or did he talk much about that?
I hope that he sometimes sees our show. I was made aware by Joy Jackson that she put it out to him, and he did confirm to me when I chatted with him in the back of the Dome, which was the conference center, that he had seen the show at least once. And so I hope he'll respect if he does see this. What he reminded me of is Bran. For those of you that are Game of Thrones followers, when Bran became this wogue and became this truly multidimensional, absolute access to source in all timelines, present, past, and future, it shifted the way that the dimension of his personality, the depth of his personality. It shifted how much extroversion and color to the way that he spoke, and the lightness of heart that many of us have when we haven't done that deep of a dive into information that changes us. It made him a little bit more flat, for those of you that are Game of Throners. And I just use that as a reference. Corey, as opposed to David is so extroverted and so demonstrative and playful and sarcastic and flippant, and sometimes a little jarry, with the way that he doesn't mind teasing and provoking the audience. And Corey is just very level and not flat, but more two-dimensional in that he answers the questions. You occasionally will see the man smile. And I really think that it has a lot to do with the fact that he's very empathic. He's feeling everything around him. He's measuring it. He's discerning it. And he also recognizes that as an introvert, he did not consciously sign up as the introvert that he is for the personality vehicle that he's in, to have to be forced into such an extroverted level of sharing. it is really alienating and kind of violating to have to be forced to be that extroverted and that in demand. And so, I think that his encounters, I feel, as he shared it with us, that those encounters have really charged him with a day-to-day discipline that all of us are probably being pulled into ourselves. Maybe not at the pace or at the timeline that he has been, but we are all being pulled into a place where you really have to disseminate what's running through you. And when you disseminate what's running through you, there's a charge. Where much is given, much is required. This is true of every intuitive as they are waking up and acknowledging the responsibility of that awakening. You're meant to hold a space of being a way shower for others, and you have to integrate it for yourself before you can do that. So he's been humbled. He has been challenged. He has been almost coerced into being an individual that he would not have naturally been able to do. He's had to overcome the flesh in every way to be able to show up at the level that he does for us, Genesee. And it's very impressive to behold.
So at the conference, earlier when discussing what he was talking about, you had mentioned that he, painted the picture of his history and what he had been privy to, and how he took you through that, but then was this way shower at the end, and painted the picture of where we're moving into.
Mhm.
Did he give much to the middle and
Well,
what it's going
that's
to take?
where Genesee and everyone else that's in this audience, if you haven't subscribed to Gaia, there's a little bit of political things going on with Gaia right now. I don't think that that would dictate that you abandon all the content that's there. Cosmic disclosure is going to be where you get that in between. The sandwich is too big for these tiny little sliver of the bookends that we just jumped to with Corey from here to here. And given the hour, I think that I would rather redirect for the quality of understanding, that people go ahead and do your 99 cents at the very least if you're not already subscribers, and get the first month for their introductory offer and dive really deep into both David Wilcock's wisdom teachings as well as his and Corey Goode's and Emery Smith's recent submissions last several seasons of Cosmic Disclosure.
So then let's go right into Bentino.
It's technically Bentinho. It's a
Oh,
tricky spelling.
Bentinho.
Yeah, I got it wrong several times trying to post. So for those of you that know Bentinho Massuro, he found his way, as I understand my limited background around him. He was self-promoting and self-realizing, self-actualizing, that because of his insatiable search that began at probably a very young conscious age, but he was already deep into literature and philosophy and some of the mysteries and the science around this universe and our consciousness back in his early teens. He was brought in as someone who already knew what he needed to share. So he didn't need to be forced to promote. He just felt called to it. And the physical vehicle that he rides, you would assume that he's American. You would assume that he is, born of a well-to-do family, and you would expect him to see him out on the golf course. He has a tendency to wear polo shirts, nice fitting European style jeans. He's very well dressed, leather jacket, good looking guy. And the way that he holds himself with an audience as he approaches, giving his expertise at his moment to speak, was to hold the entire audience in silence for 10 minutes while he individually made eye contact with, leaned in energetically, and silently and wordlessly greeted everyone that was sitting in
Wow.
that dome.
Oh my
He
goodness.
connected first. And then he
Mm.
proceeded with a PowerPoint that he claims he just threw together. It was a little bit better put together than just having been, winged it the night
The airplane
before.
ride.
Right, right. It looked like there was a lot more meat to that. But he went to explain the entire nature of the universal consciousness for which we are all a part, from source, devolving down into all of the levels of dimensionality, starting with one-dimensional, two-dimensional, and then spiraling all the way up back into the absolute, the one infinite creator source. All of these words apply. And what it was like to graduate from 1 to 2, 2 to, he started actually at third dimensional, but 3 to 4, 4 to 5, all the way up, and some of the inherent lessons and sub lessons. It was phenomenal. And by the time he was done speaking, I had a question that couldn't be missed. And it was my meditations. Would you please, Bentinho, corroborate this? Because it is my understanding through my deep dive and my most lucid connections with that absolute one infinite creator, that source code, that it is a constant and an eternal play of devolution and evolution again. It isn't that we only ascend once, folks. I've got news for you. You're infinite. The soul you're in may be evolving, ascending for the first time. It may, that might be true. But you individuated in that soul and other experiences in other soul forms or in other multidimensional aspects and individuations of your soul form, hopefully not confusing you by stair-stepping that over, has ascended and descended many, many times. So I asked him, I have experienced that going straight back to the eye of the divine, right back to the eye of God, where I'm not just in the eye of God asking the eye of God questions. I am the eye of God. I am the one infinite creator. I am not separate from the creation. And did he perceive that that was that ongoing spiral? And apparently that was a hit with a lot of people in the audience, because it's the ultimate question. And I'm bound and determined I'm probably going to write a book that's going to sound something like this. We never get off this ride.
Never.
We don't. We are infinity, right, Genesee? And we're
I'm
constantly
in complete
embodying.
agreement. Yeah, I had this rabbit hole conversation with a cousin, believe it or not, and we went back and forth asking just like you did. And so I've been the I, and then once you're the I, you want to be the human. And then once you're the human, you want to be the I.
That's a
And
whole
so
show,
it's
isn't it,
this
Genesee?
it's the Ouroboros, right? It is the infinite spiral of recreation, expansion. It's oscillation. It's all of these words we've heard and played with. And so, like we say, this is our tagline. So if you're not loving it, figure out how to love it, because this is it.
That's right. That's right. And Genesee, oh my gosh, that is an entire show. I want to
Oh,
touch
good.
on Bentinho again. I'm going to give one last chance to our audience. Anyone that's in the queue, anyone that's in the chat room, 919-518-9773, because this is the biggest, this is the Mac Daddy topic right here. Everything notwithstanding, whether it's blue avians or raptors that you're riding around in spacefaring anti-gravity vehicles with, or you're experiencing ghosts and paranormal activity and every level of multidimensionality, we're talking about the Mac Daddy topic here. What our true nature is and how we spiral in it. And what that divine agenda is that we are choosing very lucidly before we drop into the density of 3D. We knew exactly what we were doing. There's not a single one of us that is here that did not choose to be here. But Genesee, you hit it right on the money. Whether I was talking to some of the guests that were there that have gone into that eye of God through their deep dive meditations and spiritual work and shamanic journeying, or whether it was people like Bentinho, who he said has, because of his experience, made it that much more of a necessity, just by nature of evolution, to find himself in a much tighter bandwidth and social circle that he could relate to. Again, something I deeply understand. When we return to that absolute, why do we want to come back and be individuated again, Genesee? A lot of those, from Bentinho to a gentleman I spoke to by the name of Matt. Gosh, Matt, I hope that you're listening, because you've gone to that yearning place that the absolute felt when it discovered that it was alone, until it began to fractalize and individuate itself. And the love that you can feel and the bliss that near-death experiencers and deep meditators will tell you, that joy that surpasseth understanding, biblically stated, that joy and that peace, it has an opposite that can feel like a gnawing, aching emptiness that is seeking to have company. And none of us want to be in that place. So the divine individuated itself and fractalized itself, and it was its children, if you will, and why it loves us so much and why everything can be forgivable and is expected to be forgiven. We have fun being the divine. We have joy. We have creativity exponentially by being these fractalized divinity. And so, Genesee, when you say, I love being human, and people in our audience cringe because they're just ready to jump out of their bodies, we want to bring them back to, do you want the responsibility of being the one infinite creator that feels absolutely every one of its spirit children, its individuated, fractalized iterations of itself, feel everything all at once? The bliss and the abyss? That's a big responsibility. We're meant to love riding in these bodies and in this multidimensionality. And those of us that came to this tough as ass planet, we came to not the dummy rock, the PhD sphere, the toughest place you can go, at least in this area of the multiverse. At this dawn, well, we're not at the dawn, but we are just ready, pre-dawn of a brand new era of human evolution, where we're breaking through into another iteration of our density. This is meant to be a wild and exciting and really visceral ride, and we should be enjoying it. And you can only enjoy it if you realize you chose it and you start to reorchestrate how you are managing it and being purposed in it and finding your community in it, because this is supposed to be a place where you're fed. The law of reciprocity warrants, if you're in it, you need to be being fulfilled by that experience. Don't you agree? Don't you agree, Genesee? Is there any other way?
No, and right back to our beginning statement, do the shadow work, because once you do the shadow work, you regain so much of that sovereignty to own this experience, and you claim I am that I am, as above so below. You feel it all, and it makes the ride that much better.
Well, let's talk about why we did the ride and why we took the ride, and we put that out there in books. I've written 2 books, Prosperity Through the Development of Emotional Intuition, and that did very well on Amazon. I got that, much sought after #1 bestseller status, and then launched the thing I never wanted to write, which was my personal memoir, because you have to kind of really data dump and vomit up your guts, and then you have to go back and make some sense and order and make it palatable for your readers and your audience. And that's called The Reluctant Intuitive, A Soulful Confession and Practical Guide. I had to tell my story so you understood. I'm not special. I am not unique. I am just one that may be further down the road than you. And how do I encourage you to embrace your intuition?
You did the work.
Your ability to discern, to integrate, reflect, and then you go give your gift. And Genesee, you were ceaseless in demanding that your guidance show your multidimensionality. And it took a sacrifice, didn't it, for you to get there and then be able to tell your story?
Oh yeah, just like you, I documented in 3 books. I documented my ascension process, 3D, 4D, 5D, and it was a Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, basically explains it. But it was, I say, everybody's crisis moment. When you're going through it, all you can see is the crisis, but look at me, look at Tatiana. We would look at you in your crisis moment and just we would hold space, but have so much love that you were going through that moment, because through the crisis is where you're given that next opportunity to do the work and move to the next plateau and see more clearly everything that you're co-creating. It's just the most magical ride, but you got to do the work. You got to do the physical body work. You got to do the emotional body work, and you got to do the mental body work. And that's kit and caboodle what changes this low self, this personality, into multidimensionality.
Yep.
We're waiting for you.
Well, so let's just kind of warmly round up with this, Genesee, because where you hold that space and where you're authentic with that space is an indisputable truth and force to be reckoned with. We've got people that have been writing in, that have been in the chat room, that have gone to YouTube and said, where is my ascension? Why hasn't anybody brought it to me yet? And they're stomping a spiritually 2-year-old foot. Please forgive me for saying this to you folks. I have been the 2-year-old a long time. I have been that person waiting for someone else to show me where the truth is, break down all the systems, flip the script, and it doesn't work that way. You're co-creating your own reality right now. You decide which crowd you're going to do it with. Are you going to be doing it with the one that you're in resistance to, which is actually feeding their agenda and keeping you in this dimensional timeline longer? Or are you going to join one like this amazing group at Dimensions of Disclosure, like the one I was at with From Venus with Love that I met Genesee through 2 weeks ago in Shasta? You need to be part of the change and redreaming the future. So I want to let our folks know, as we're wrapping up on the hour, Genesee, and something I didn't get a chance to tell you, we meditated on 8/18/18 at 11:11 a.m. and at 11:11 p.m.
Wow. I saw that on the website. I was so jelly.
and trust me, your voice knows it because you just went into one of those echo chambers where your voice gets wild and all your technology went, woo! But let me tell our audience, my friends, my community, the people that are my brothers and sisters that I'm doing this for, the power in that dome during that meditation shot every single one of us as a macrocosm into the cosmos so far, so wide, and back again up into the galactic central sun through our bodies, funneling, using us as proxy down into the core of the earth and the central sun of the earth, blanketing this entire solar system and out into our major star systems, calling in this vibrational frequency, this quantum belt, this quantum photon belt, this ascension vibe that we are all in. It was phenomenal. And they showed us how to redream a future, whether it's a crystalline world, it's a new systems of beautiful natural domes, sentient life moving in and out of our living systems, and us working in harmony and no longer polluting and no longer marginalizing any aspect of this beautiful Mother Gaia that we live on. The creative revisioning and redreaming was through the roof. And we need each other and we need these meditations. When we say do the work, we're telling you, when you go inside and you discover that you have everything inside of you, you will come back and thank us and go, I wished I'd known how true it was and that I wasn't waiting for anybody outside of me. So Genesee, final thoughts before we wrap it in and tell our community what's coming up next.
Let's validate all those 2-year-olds, because I love that you use this visual, the 2-year-old stomping the foot. So we enter sacral chakra right around that age, and that's connection to the emotional body. So if you've been triggered, if Tatiana hit the nail on the head in calling you a screaming 2-year-old, wanting to fight the good fight and have it served to you on a platter, it's just showing you that you're ready for it. So move to the next level, get up to do that work on that mental field, get out of being triggered by the emotional body, understand that your emotions are just a language showing you where to go. And then do the work on the mental body, get into meditation, get into daily practice, do the work, because it's the yellow brick road. It's so beautiful.
It is. And we know that it's not always a well-paved road from our perspective, but ultimately everything's going to be love and forgiveness anyway. Yeah, all the way down to the darkest of the bad guys. It's still going to be love and forgiveness because they held up the shadow mirror that was part of our infinite human society for which we are all one. So, I want to let our folks know, I'm just going to let the cat out of the bag a little bit here, Genesee. We are going to be offering sacred site retreats starting as soon as December of 2018. We have got a beautiful list of locations from Serpent's Mound to Maui, Sedona, Mount Shasta, and more. We're working out a calendar, but there are scheduled dates that are going to be revealed soon. We are one of many that are doing these, but if you feel like you resonate with us and the rapport is here, we would be happy to be your way showers. Stay tuned to that. Bridget's going to be sharing some of her work next week and some of the tours she's already doing in Sedona and Maui, because we're all called to these great places. But no matter what, we want you to know we're here for you. Genesee, myself, ultimately, though, it comes back to bringing it to you and the power that you hold and the community that you are bringing to us, through us, and with us, because together we are the solution.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section at nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Telestream's Wirecast software, StreamingGear.com, Carolina Apparel, and DeltaForce.net.